Mendelian genetics, discovered by Gregor Mendel, are all about how traits get passed down from parents to their kids. It focuses on three key laws: the law of segregation, the law of dominance, and the law of independent assortment. The law of segregation states that two copies of each genetic factor segregate during the development of gametes to ensure that each parent's offspring attains one factor. The law of dominance states that when parents with pure, contrasting traits are crossed together, only one form of trait appears in the next generation. The hybrid offspring will exhibit only the dominant trait in the phenotype. The law of independent assortment says that the alleles of two or more different genes get sorted into gametes independently of one another. In other words, the allele a gamete receives for one gene does not influence the allele received for another gene. These laws are helpful for plant breeders trying to grow crops with specific traits, like immunity. Crop production can be a real challenge because pests and diseases often disrupt the yield and quality of yields. For instance, issues like fungi and animals can cut down wheat harvests by around 10 to 23% globally, which leads to food shortages and higher costs for pesticides. By understanding how traits are inherited, Mendel's laws help in creating new crop types that can better withstand these tough conditions. But this also raises ethical issues, which we will be focusing on in this video. Modern breeding techniques through Mendelian genetics have impacted modern agriculture. This is mostly because of selective breeding, where breeders can make planned decisions when choosing parent plants. The primary goal of this selection process is to identify and breed plants possessing desirable traits, precisely higher yield and immunity. By using Mendelian genetics, breeders can ensure that these desirable traits are passed down to the next generation in a predictable pattern. An example of this precision is found in wheat research. Scientists focusing on this crop have specifically observed that desirable traits linked to single genes can be identified and used to create new wheat varieties. This approach is highly effective in engineering wheat varieties that successfully resist diseases. The preciseness in these breeding methods leads to many benefits. The resulting crops show highly predictable patterns for passing on traits. By removing the uncertainty caused by older techniques, these methods significantly speed up the process of boosting both immunity and overall yields. To ensure the accuracy of how these desirable traits are inherited through the generations, scientists performing this research must analyze multiple datasets. However, even though these genetic improvements make plants more resilient and increase yields, they may affect human health and the environment. For example, if genetically modified wheat spreads in the environment, it could affect other plants, insects, or soil organisms, which may harm ecosystems. If the long-term effects of eating GM wheat are not fully known, people could develop health issues, like antibiotic resistance. One of the biggest arguments is that the development of genetically modified foods increases yields and leads to a fast growth rate, and many people believe that it is the key to ending world hunger. This is supported by studies that were conducted in 2014, where the data showed that GM technology has increased crop yields by 22% and farmers' profits by 68%. As an example of the scale of GM food production, approximately 90% of the world's corn, soybeans, and sugar beets are all GM foods. In Africa, efforts to grow more GM foods have been seen, with the number of countries growing GM foods increasing from 3 to 6. South Africa is one of the top 10 developing countries to plant biotech crops, with approximately 6.7 million acres dedicated to biotech agriculture in 2019. Although the cost of these seeds is significantly more than that of normal crops, their overall production costs are reported to be lower because farmers spend less on pesticides and other inputs. Studies have shown that pesticide use can be reduced by 37%, leading to a 68% increase in profitability for some crops. This is due to the natural resistance towards pests and insects. GM foods are also known to have a longer shelf life, and they taste better, All these are good arguments for why GM foods should be produced, but let's look at the counter-arguments for why they shouldn't be produced. The biggest threat from genetically modified foods is that they can have harmful impacts on the human body. This is because eating these foods can lead to the development of diseases that are resistant to antibiotics. However, individual GM foods and their safety should be assessed on a case-by-case basis. GM foods currently available on the international market have passed safety assessments and are not likely to present risks for human health. Besides that, the lack of knowledge about the long-term effects of these foods on human health keeps many people away from them. Many religious and cultural communities are against these foods because they believe that it is an unnatural way of producing food. Many people are also against the idea of transferring animal genes to plants and vice versa. There are also concerns that these new genetically modified foods can cause damage to other organisms that live in the environment. Experts believe that in the future, developing countries will be relying on industrialized countries for food because food production will be controlled by them in the time to come. The use of Mendelian genetics and modern gene technologies in agriculture has changed the way we grow crops. By understanding how traits are inherited, scientists and farmers have been able to produce disease-resistant and high-yielding varieties that contribute to food security and sustainability. Studies have shown that genetically modified crops have higher yields, they decrease pesticide use, and they may even reduce production costs. However, these benefits come with ethical and environmental concerns that can't be ignored. Achieving food security should not come at the expense of safety or environmental balance. Therefore, as we continue to apply Mendel's foundational principles to modern agriculture, it is important to ensure that the technology benefits all people, protects ecosystems, and contributes to a truly sustainable future.